Welcome to our deep dive into The Secret Door to Success by Florence Scovel Shinn. We're going to be exploring a YouTube video that kind of summarizes her book. And I have to say, this isn't your typical self-help advice.
Yeah, it's really interesting how she uses these biblical stories and symbolism, not just for spiritual growth, but as this practical guide to kind of unlocking your potential as a person.
Yeah, it really does feel like a treasure map leading to a richer, more fulfilling life.
Hmm.
So have you ever felt like success was just out of reach, like there's a wall between you and what you want to achieve? Well, Shinn believes there's a secret door, and that's what we're here to unlock today.
Yeah, and she actually uses the story of the walls of Jericho to represent these barriers that we all face. But it's not about literal walls, right? It's about those mental blocks that we create in our minds.
Okay, so we're talking about things like resentment, negativity, even dwelling on past failures. Those can really hold us back. But in the story, the walls came tumbling down with the power of sound.
Exactly. And Shin takes that idea and applies it to our thoughts and words. She even gives specific affirmations that are designed to break down these self-imposed walls. One that really stands out is, what God has done for others, he now does for me and more.
That's interesting. It's not just about asking. It's about declaring a truth, shifting your mindset from scarcity to abundance. I could see how that could be powerful.
What's unique about Shin is that she doesn't just talk about positive thinking, she goes deeper. She calls our thoughts and words radioactivity, like they actually shape our reality.
Radioactivity, that's a strong image.
It is. And to illustrate this, the video shares a story of Jim Tolley, the king of the hobos. Now, you might not think of a hobo as being successful, but Tolley actually found success.
How? By winning the hobo lottery or something.
Not quite. He achieved success by dramatizing his experiences, finding joy in his work, and sharing his unique perspective. Essentially, he transformed his reality through the power of his thoughts.
So it's not about ignoring hardship. It's about choosing how we frame it. And I guess that ties into Shinn's advice to be interested in yourself, and others will find you interesting.
Right. It's about recognizing your own value, cultivating that inner confidence, and letting it shine through.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, Shinn also uses this biblical metaphor of making bricks without straw. I have to admit, when I first heard that, I was a bit confused.
Well, think about it. The Israelites were tasked with making bricks, which is tough enough, but they were denied straw, which is the essential ingredient. It seemed impossible. But Shin sees this as a lesson in working with what she calls spiritual law.
Could you explain that a bit more? What exactly is spiritual law?
It's this idea that there are these universal principles governing success and abundance principles that work regardless of your circumstances. It's about tapping into that power.
So it's not about denying the challenges. It's about understanding there's a higher power that we can align with to overcome them.
Yes, and the video actually gives a really good example of this spiritual law in action. There's a story about a woman who desperately needed rent money. Instead of panicking, she used the affirmation, "The unexpected happens. My seemingly impossible good now comes to pass." And she found the money.
Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
It really highlights that sometimes the solution comes from a source we'd never expect.
Exactly. It's about trusting that the universe will provide even when we can't see how. And Shin calls this active faith.
Now, how is active faith different from just, hoping for the best?
It's about taking action, even small steps that demonstrate your belief in the outcome that you want. Shin uses the example of a man preparing for a trip abroad, even though he couldn't afford it yet. He bought a trunk to pack his things, visualizing himself on that trip.
So he acted as if the trip was already happening even before it was a reality. That's an interesting concept.
And it ultimately led to him getting the money for the trip. So it's not just about wishing, it's about taking those steps that show the universe you're serious about your goals.
This is starting to feel very empowering, like we have more agency than we realize.
Yeah.
But there's also this idea of surrendering control, which Shinn represents through the symbol of the long arm of God.
Right. It's about recognizing that we're not meant to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. There's a higher power working for us.
So it's less about giving up and more about letting go of the need to control every little thing.
Exactly. And she says that resentment, anger, all those negative emotions, they're our true enemies. They block the flow of good.
And surrendering to a higher power, trusting in that support, can bring a sense of relief and open us up to greater possibilities.
The video tells a story about a student who had her money stolen. Instead of being angry, she forgave the thief, and shortly after, her financial situation dramatically improved.
That's a powerful example of how releasing negativity can create space for positive change. It's like clearing out the mental clutter to make room for abundance. But life is rarely a straight path. We often find ourselves at a crossroads, having to make difficult choices. What does Shin say about navigating those forks in the road?
This is where intuition comes in. Shin calls it a spiritual faculty, a magic path to guide us towards our desires. It's about trusting those gut feelings, those subtle nudges that often point us in the right direction.
I love that she calls it the magic path. It adds a sense of wonder and possibility to decision-making.
Absolutely. And it's not just some whimsical notion. She tells a story about a woman who had this strong feeling to stay at a particular hotel, even though she didn't have a reservation. She followed her intuition and ended up getting free accommodation.
That's amazing. It's like the universe is constantly sending us signs and whispers, guiding us towards our highest good. We just have to be open to receiving them. But what about those times when we face what feels like an impossible challenge? Our own personal Red Sea, so to speak.
Well, Shin draws this parallel to the Israelites' journey across the Red Sea. Remember, they were trapped between the approaching Egyptian army and this vast sea. It seemed hopeless, but they had faith, and the sea parted, allowing them to cross to safety.
So it's about summoning that courage and faith, even when the odds seem stacked against us.
Exactly. And there's a story in the video about a student who needed to get somewhere, but she was short on money. She only had enough for a short taxi ride, but she took a leap of faith and got in the taxi anyway.
Did she end up stranded?
No. As luck would have it, she ran into a friend in the taxi who was able to help her out.
Wow, talk about divine intervention. It seems like the universe rewards those bold acts of faith. Okay, so we've crossed our Red Sea, taken those leaps of faith. What's next on our journey towards unlocking that secret door?
This is where the idea of the watchman at the gate comes in. Shin uses this to represent our superconscious mind, the part of us that's always guarding our thoughts.
So it's like a bouncer at the door of our minds, making sure only the good stuff gets in.
Exactly. And it's up to us to be mindful of what we allow into our mental space. Choosing positive, constructive thoughts is key.
It's like weeding out those negative thoughts and replacing them with affirmations that support our goals.
She even uses the Wizard of Oz to illustrate this point. Remember how Dorothy goes on this long journey only to discover that the power to get home was within her all along?
Right. Those ruby slippers were on her feet the whole time.
Exactly. It's a reminder that we already have the power to create the life we want. We just need to tap into it.
This is all starting to feel very empowering. Like we have more control over our destiny than we realize.
But let's shift gears a bit and talk about abundance. How does Shin define the path of abundance?
She contrasts rich consciousness with poor consciousness. And it's not just about how much money you have in the bank. It's about your mindset, your beliefs about abundance.
So two people could have the same amount of money but experience it very differently based on their consciousness.
Exactly. And she tells a story about a woman who transformed her life by shifting her thoughts about money. She moved from a mindset of lack to one of abundance, and her reality followed suit.
So it's about retraining your mind to see opportunities instead of limitations, to believe in your capacity to attract wealth and prosperity.
Yes, and she emphasizes the importance of acting as if you already have what you desire, using affirmations like, I am a child of God and my rich Father now pours out his abundance upon me. So it's not about faking it till you make it. It's about embodying the energy of abundance even before you see the physical manifestation of it.
Precisely. And that brings us to one of the most powerful affirmations in the Bible, which Shin highlights, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want.
Now, how does this relate to success beyond the obvious religious context?
It's about recognizing a higher power as the ultimate source of provision, understanding that we're always supported and cared for regardless of our circumstances.
So it's about cultivating that deep sense of trust and knowing that our needs will always be met.
Yes. And the video shares a story of a woman who embraced this truth and experienced what she called instant manifestations. Her needs were met immediately and effortlessly.
That's incredible. It really highlights the power of aligning ourselves with that infinite source of abundance.
It does. And it speaks to the importance of cultivating that childlike sense of wonder and expectation, something Shin emphasizes throughout her work.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
It's about recapturing that sense of awe and possibility that we often lose as adults.
Exactly. And Shin talks about how negative beliefs and experiences can rob us of this childlike wonder.
So it's about letting go of those jaded, cynical perspectives and approaching life with fresh eyes open to miracles.
She illustrates this with a story about a student who used the affirmation, I look with wonder at that which is before me, and actually got a missed opportunity back.
That's amazing. It's like saying, okay, universe, I'm open to the magic. Surprise me. But what about those times when it feels like our good is just out of reach, like we're playing a cosmic game of catch-up?
Well, Shin believes our good is always waiting for us. We just need to become aware of it and claim it. It's about tuning into our intuition and following those hunches that lead us towards those blessings.
It's like we're on a treasure hunt and the map is within us.
And again, she uses the story to illustrate this. A woman had a strong intuitive feeling to stay at a certain hotel, even though it seemed illogical. She followed her hunch and ended up getting free accommodations.
Wow. These stories really highlight the power of trusting our inner guidance. Okay, we've caught up with our good, cultivated an attitude of wonder, and aligned ourselves with the divine plan. But what about those times when we feel stuck, like we're wandering in a spiritual desert facing insurmountable challenges?
Shin talks about finding rivers in the desert. It's about recognizing that even in the midst of difficulty, there's a source of abundance that can sustain us.
So it's about trusting that even when things seem barren, there's a wellspring of possibility just waiting to be tapped.
Exactly. And she explains how our negative beliefs, our limitations, they create the sense of scarcity, keeping us trapped in that desert of lack.
It's like our limiting beliefs create a self-imposed drought.
Right. And she tells a story about a woman who refused to wear her glasses because she didn't want to use them up.
Wait, what?
It sounds strange. I know, but it illustrates a deeper point. She was so focused on scarcity, on preserving what she had, that she wasn't fully experiencing life in the present moment.
That's a great analogy. It's like clinging to those scraps of scarcity instead of trusting in the infinite supply of the universe.
Exactly. And it's about shifting that mindset, recognizing that abundance is always available and choosing to live from that place of fullness.
This has been an incredibly enlightening journey so far. We've uncovered so much wisdom about unlocking our potential and stepping into a life of greater success and fulfillment. But there's still more to explore. We'll be back in part 2 of this deep dive to continue our exploration of Florence Scovel Shinn's The Secret Door to Success. Welcome back to our deep dive into Florence Scovel Shinn's The Secret Door to Success. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty energized by all these ideas we've been talking about.
It's amazing how she kind of weaves together this practical advice with these spiritual principles.
Right, and there's this concept she calls divine impersonality, which sounds a bit intimidating at first, but it's actually pretty liberating when you understand it.
Yeah, think of it like this. Spiritual law operates impartially, like a universal force. It doesn't play favorites, it just responds to our thoughts and beliefs.
So it's like saying, hey, universe, I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm just learning to work with the laws of abundance.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all connected to this source of abundance, and our ability to tap into it depends on our alignment with these principles.
It makes me think of that saying, you reap what you sow. If we plant seeds of lack and limitation, that's what we'll experience. But if we cultivate a mindset of abundance, well, that's when things start to shift.
And Shin is very specific about how to cultivate this rich consciousness. It's about focusing on thoughts of prosperity, generosity, and gratitude.
It's like shifting your mental frequency, tuning into a different channel where prosperity is the dominant broadcast.
Yeah.
But it's not just about thinking positive thoughts, right? Shin also talks about this idea of acting as if we already have what we desire.
Right. It's about embodying that energy of success and abundance. Think of it like this. If you were invited to a fancy gala, you wouldn't show up in your pajamas. You'd dress for the occasion.
So we're dressing our minds in the energy of what we want to attract.
Precisely. And that leads us to another key principle, non-resistance.
Okay, this one I struggle with a bit. It seems kind of counterintuitive. Don't we have to put in the effort to make things happen?
Of course, action is important, but Shin is talking about that tendency we have to try and force outcomes, to control every little thing. And sometimes that actually creates resistance, blocking the flow of good.
It's like trying to swim upstream against a strong current, exhausting river.
Exactly. She encourages us to surrender to a higher power, to trust that the universe has a way of orchestrating events in our favor.
So it's more about aligning with the flow, working with it instead of against it.
Yes, and that includes letting go of negativity. Shin believes that resentment, anger, all those emotions act as energetic blocks.
It's like we're holding ourselves hostage in a mental prison of negativity.
And forgiveness is the key that unlocks that cell door. It's not about condoning someone's actions, it's about freeing yourself from that burden.
It's like that saying, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. We're the ones who suffer. So we've talked about rich consciousness, acting as if, and non-resistance. What other wisdom does Shin offer for unlocking that secret door?
Well, there's this fascinating idea she calls divine selection. Essentially, it means that we're constantly attracting experiences and opportunities that align with our dominant thoughts and beliefs.
So we're not just passive recipients of whatever life throws at us. We're actively shaping our reality through our thoughts.
Exactly. And she encourages us to be mindful of the thoughts we entertain, focusing on those that support our goals and desires. It's like being a DJ for our minds, selecting the tracks that create the vibe we want to experience.
I love that analogy. But how do we know which tracks to choose?
That's where intuition comes in. Shin is a big advocate for listening to that still small voice within.
Oh, I resonate with that. It's like our inner compass pointing us in the right direction, even when our minds are full of doubts and fears.
Exactly. And she cautions against relying solely on logic or reason. Sometimes those intuitive leaps of faith are what lead to the biggest breakthroughs.
It's like that saying, the heart has its reasons of which reason knows nothing. Sometimes you just have to trust your gut.
And often those detours from the well-worn path can lead to the most beautiful destinations.
Okay, so we've got divine impersonality, cultivating a rich consciousness, non-resistance, divine selection, and listening to our intuition. It's a lot to process, but it's starting to paint a picture of how to approach life with more intention and purpose.
It is, and Shin takes it a step further by introducing this concept of spiritual gifts. She believed that each of us is born with unique talents and abilities that are meant to be shared with the world.
It's like we all have these hidden treasures within us just waiting to be unearthed.
Precisely, and she encourages us to identify and nurture these gifts, to use them to create a life of purpose and fulfillment.
It's like discovering that you have a talent for painting or singing or writing. Wouldn't you want to share that with the world?
Of course. And Shin believed that by using our gifts to serve others, we align ourselves with the flow of abundance.
It's like that saying, the more you give, the more you receive.
Right. And that brings us to the importance of expectancy, believing that our good is already on its way.
So instead of doubting and worrying, we should be cultivating a mindset of anticipation and excitement.
Exactly. Remember, Shin believed that our thoughts and beliefs act as magnets. If we're constantly expecting lack and limitation, that's what we'll experience.
It's like setting our internal GPS to abundance and trusting it will guide us to our destination.
I love that analogy. And she encourages us to visualize our desires as already fulfilled, feeling the joy and gratitude as if they were already ours.
It's like creating a mental blueprint, imprinting it on our subconscious.
Yes. And by holding that vision with faith and expectancy, we give the universe permission to bring it to fruition.
This is all starting to feel very empowering, like we have more influence over our lives than we realize. But what about those times when it feels like our dreams are on hold, like there's a cosmic delay in their manifestation?
Shin acknowledges that there can be periods of what she calls incubation, when our desires are gestating on the invisible plane. But she encourages us to trust in the divine timing of events.
So it's like those times when a seed is planted, but it hasn't sprouted yet. We have to trust that it's growing beneath the surface.
Exactly. And we can use this time wisely.
By doing what? Sitting around, twiddling our thumbs?
Not quite. Think of it like this. If you were hosting a big party, you wouldn't wait until the guests arrive to start decorating and preparing the food. You'd use the time beforehand to make sure everything is perfect.
So we're essentially getting ready for the arrival of our dreams.
Yes. We can clarify our desires, release any lingering doubts or fears, and cultivate a mindset of gratitude.
It's about trusting the process, knowing that our dreams are unfolding in perfect timing.
And often the blessings that manifest exceed our wildest expectations, precisely because we surrender to that divine timing.
This is incredibly inspiring. It feels like we're peeling back the layers of illusion and discovering our true potential. But there's still more to explore in this rich tapestry of wisdom. We'll be back in part 3 of this deep dive to continue our journey into Florence Scovel Shinn's The Secret Door to Success. Welcome back to our final part in this deep dive into the secret door to success. We've covered so much ground already, from breaking down those mental barriers to really cultivating that abundance mindset. What else can we learn from Florence Scovel Shinn in this last part?
Well, now that we've laid the groundwork, Shin introduces a really practical technique called treating. Have you ever heard of this?
Treating. Not in this context. It sounds more like something you'd do for a medical condition.
It is a bit like that. It involves identifying those negative beliefs or those thought patterns that are causing trouble, and then replacing them with positive affirmations.
So it's like this mental detox, clearing out those limiting beliefs that are holding us back.
Exactly. And Shin really emphasizes using affirmations that truly resonate with you, those that evoke a feeling of truth.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like finding the right key to unlock that door to the outcome you want. But what if it feels like those affirmations are just bouncing off a brick wall? What do we do when doubt creeps in?
Well, Shin acknowledges that we will face setbacks and delays. It's just part of the journey. And she actually encourages us to see these challenges as opportunities to learn and grow.
So it's like those unexpected detours on a road trip. They might not be part of the plan,
Yeah.
but they can lead to some pretty amazing discoveries.
Yeah, and Shin reminds us that what we often perceive as failure is just a chance to learn and adjust how we're approaching things.
It's like experimenting in a science lab.
Hmm.
Not every experiment's going to work perfectly, but each one gives you valuable data.
That's a great way to think about it. And something I find really refreshing about Shin is how she defines success. It's not just about money or possessions. She sees it as a state of harmony, being aligned with your true purpose.
So it's about living a life that feels authentic and meaningful no matter our external circumstances.
Exactly. And she emphasizes finding joy in the journey itself, not just fixating on that end goal.
I love that. It's like that saying, happiness is not a destination, it's a way of traveling.
And a big part of that is gratitude, really appreciating the abundance that surrounds us right now.
That's so important. It's about shifting our focus from what we lack to what we have, appreciating how rich our lives are already. But what about those times when we just feel lost, unsure of what our purpose is? What does Shin say about finding our true path?
She says to listen to our intuition, that still small voice. Trust those inner nudges that guide us toward what's best for us.
It's like that inner compass, always pointing us in the right direction, even when we're lost or confused.
Exactly. And she encourages us to be open to new possibilities, approach life with that sense of wonder and curiosity that we had as kids.
Like rediscovering that excitement and awe that we often lose as adults. Remembering that life's an adventure.
And she also reminds us that we're never really alone on this journey. There's a higher power that's always guiding and supporting us.
That's really comforting, knowing that we're connected to something bigger than ourselves. This has been such a rich and inspiring deep dive. We've explored so many powerful principles and practical techniques, but the real journey begins now as we take these insights and apply them to our own lives.
And remember, the secret door to success isn't hidden out there somewhere. It's within each of us.
It really is. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want you to think about which affirmation or principle really spoke to you. What step will you take today to unlock your own secret door?
And always remember Shin's words. Your word is your wand. Use the power of your thoughts, beliefs, and words to shape your reality.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the wisdom of Florence Scovel Shinn. Until next time, keep seeking, keep growing, and keep unlocking those secret doors to success that lie within you.